They were interviewing drug dealers, saying, okay, we're going to keep a lid on this. This is your territory. You don't get to take another half a block.
Now I don't wanna do it, but I ain't afraid to die. Lord knows I ain't perfect, I ain't trying to tell a lie. It's understood and I ain't hearing all that woulda, coulda, shoulda. Trying to say you want peace, then you burn the.
It was my God's honest that I was all about a non-violent approach, but it seems truth is a non-topic.
Now you were in Brooklyn.
Well, first,
actually, my career began my first 6 months on the job. I was in Times Square, the Deuce, when the Deuce was the Deuce back in the 80s.
Okay.
And it was an absolute sewer. It was it was a collection point for all the assholes in the universe in one little spot, 42nd Street, 7th to 8th.
Gotcha.
And that was fun, but, you know, it really wasn't for me. And I ended up, after 6 months, I followed one of my training detectives up to the 34th precinct up in Washington Heights.
Okay.
All right.
That was nuts, because I don't know if you're familiar with the birthplace of crack, but it was basically around the corner from the 34th precinct.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so
And,
when did you first go? Was that like mid 80s?
86.
Okay, so that is the time when it just
The
exploded.
boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the flashpoint of the crack wars.
Wow.
So the most insane, random, violent environment I've ever been in. Was nuts. Couldn't get through a week without getting shot at.
Man.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy back then.
Because you always hear about LA during that time, but I follow a lot of, hip hop artists, and I watch the documentaries on the big crack kingpins and stuff. And some of that New York stuff is pretty wild. Some of those guys were making just millions of dollars, and they're just, New Jack City type of operations and stuff, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, Washington Heights is actually the entry point for all the powder cocaine in the United States.
Okay.
It was, you had the shipping, the completely corrupted shipping across the river in New Jersey, and the George Washington Bridge ran right through Washington Heights. So anybody, and it was all wholesale, kilo and above type of sales, along with street sales.
Right.
So it wasn't uncommon for me to run into a guy, to rub him for a gun, and meanwhile he's got a shopping bag with 7 kilos in it.
Wow.
And you get a guy like that, and meanwhile, all he's doing is he's transporting those kilos to a working spot to sell.
Right.
You get a guy like that, and they're like, just kill me now. Kill me now. I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to kill you. He goes, well, then they're going to kill my whole family, because I can't pay for that.
Were you working these cases to where you were kind of following the trail up, where you bust the street guy?
I didn't do narcotics. Narcotics was not my focus. My focus was violent crime.
Right. Okay.
I was going after gun guys. Obviously, I was rubbing up against drug dealers because they were all armed and they were shooting it out. It was totally unregulated up there.
Yeah.
And the cowboys were fighting each individual corner. And what it was the cartel, the big bosses, weren't regulating anything. Instead of selling franchises, they just let the kids coming over from the Dominican Republic with pennies in their pocket to bang it out on the corners for supremacy.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why it all came to a head. After the riots that I started, when I had to basically save my own life in a hallway fighting it out with a drug dealer, the drug barons, if you will, got smart, and they shut the whole thing down, and they started selling franchises. They were interviewing drug dealers, saying, okay, we're going to keep a lid on this. This is your territory. You don't get to take another half a block.
Right. You get this area that...
Exactly. And what would happen, and the reason why it was regulated and it got calm as fast as it did, is that if you went and you broke the edict, they disappeared you and you ended up in a swamp in New Jersey. And it wasn't even a New York murder case anymore.
So that was the streets cleaning the streets up in a way. They were doing a bit of the job for you.
It was the big bosses cleaning out their bad employees,
right,
so that they didn't come to the attention of the police.
Did you
Makes
ever
sense.
bump into any of these big crews that are talked about now, like the Supreme Team or any of those guys?
Supreme Team was in Queens.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I didn't deal with them. However, I made the arrest that got the first New York RICO prosecution going up in
Hey.
Really?
Washington Heights. There was a crew from 157th Street called the Jerry Curls.
Really?
And they were
Wow.
they were bad dudes. And at the time I was in anti-crime. I was in plain clothes, long ponytail. I know it's hard to believe now looking at me, but yeah, I had beautiful rock star hair, bunch of earrings and the goatee. I never got made as a cop. There was a homicide, a superintendent who was talking to the police about this drug crew who were pretty much killing everybody with impunity. I get called in New York. It's called a 10-2. 10-2 to squad. That means I have a command appearance at the detective squad.
You got sent for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this was back in the days when detectives were, man, they walked on water. And you didn't go up to the detective squad without an invitation. And even if you went up there, you waited until somebody decided to buzz you in through the electronic door. Like even chiefs would go up there uninvited and unannounced, and they'd stand out there for an hour before they get frustrated and leave.
Wow.
The detective bureau was a different animal back then. And it was a good animal. But anyway, I got called in, I knock at the door, and I remember the civilian who was basically the secretary for the squad. I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm like, I got a 10-2? Like, relax, Michael, you're not in trouble. Big Daddy wants to see you. Now, Big Daddy was a legendary detective. He turned out to be my mentor, Jerry Giorgio, God rest his soul. One of the most brilliant detectives ever to wear a badge. Big Daddy wants to see me. That's, you know, that's like the leper talking to Jesus at this point.
Yeah.
So he calls me in. He sits me down. He says, go get some coffee. We'll sit down. We'll talk. And I'm sitting across his desk from him, and he shows me an arrest photo. He goes, you know that guy? I'm like, yeah, that's Rambo. I locked him up 4 years ago for gunpoint robberies. I think he's still in prison. He goes, no, he's been out for a year, and we're getting this from an informant that he's the trigger man on the super on a 157 at the Jerry Curls back. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, and I'm also hearing he still has the gun, and you're going to be able to spot it a mile away because it's a great big Desert Eagle 45.
Oh,
Except it wasn't. It was a 50. It was a 50 caliber.
Wow.
jeez.
Talking about a literal hand cannon.
Yeah, that's a cannon.
Yeah, my God.
So I says, all right, Jerry, what can I do for you? He goes, you think you and your team can just shut it down for a week, sit on this guy? We're pretty sure he's using it to protect the spots on 157. Catch him with the gun, lock him up. It's your collar. But then we're going to sit him down and we're going to lean on him. And we're going to see if we can flip him on that homicide. At the very least, we're going to get the ballistics off the gun. I said, yeah, okay. Took us 2 days. I'm sitting in an alcove across the street from the spot, and I'm watching him bringing buyers into the hallway, tossing them, rubbing them down for weapons, handing them a playing card, and sending them upstairs to the spot. But at this point, he doesn't have the gun. Finally, a car shows up from out of state with Jersey plates, and 4 serious-looking gangsters, like black gangsters, get out with empty duffel bags. I'm like, okay. Now I'm going over the point to my partners, like, listen, something's up. He's bringing 4 guys in, and they look on. And then sure enough, he goes to the mailboxes. He has a key. And he opens the center console, flips the thing down, and reaches in, and here comes that giant nickel-plated
gun.
automatic. I'm like, he's got the gun. Go, 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 go. I go flying across the street, almost get hit by a livery taxi. My partners come pulling on in 2 cars from both sides of the block. He sees us, puts the gun back in the mail chute, closes it, locks it, and throws the key out in the garbage in the chute at the side of the building. The 4 guys from Jersey see us coming in, and they're like, oh no, and they get right down on the floor. All 4 of them were on. All 4 of them were on, by the way.
Wow.
So those are 4 gun arrests right there. We grab him and we're debating, what do we do? I think we're going to have to secure the building and get a warrant unless we find the kid. My partner wades out into neck-high garbage, rats running all over the place, and he actually comes up with the kid.
Oh man.
So now we lock Rambo up, and he's like, "Oh no, not you again, O'Keefe." I'm like, "Yeah, me again." I bring him up to the squad, and Jerry and another detective, Joe Montori, another brilliant detective. It was interesting that they worked together because they kind of had the same easygoing personality, but Joe could be the bad cop when he needed to.
Right.
So I'm sitting like a fly in the wall in the interrogation room, and Jerry Giorgio is sitting, big 6'4", solid, sitting across, just smiling benignly. And Joe Montori is getting all excited, screaming, yelling, threatening. He gets Rambo on the defensive. "I'm not going to tell you nothing," he said. Montori says, "I can't talk to this guy. I'm getting out of here before I put a bullet in his brain pad." And he walks out. And now Rambo gets all touchy. He starts sniffling. He looks at Jerry with big sad eyes. He goes, "You don't understand, Giorgio. I didn't have a chance. You got to help me." Jerry reaches out, pats him on the arm, and says, "Tell Big Daddy what happened." He came out with all of it.
Oh man.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there. I'm just a kid with about 5 years on the job. And I'm sitting in the corner like, I know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
That's when I knew what I wanted to do for a living at that point.